Why African leaders struggle to refuse Western aid. African leaders' inability to refuse Western aid is a multifaceted issue deeply rooted in historical, economic, political and structural realities that continue to bind many nations to foreign assistance. Although there have been calls for African countries to reject aid and pursue self-sufficiency, various obstacles make this exceedingly difficult. This critique will explore the key factors contributing to this dependence and the challenges of breaking free from aid. 1. Historical legacy of colonialism. The enduring effects of colonialism play a significant role in African nations' reliance on Western aid. When European powers carved up the continent, they established borders and economies designed to serve colonial interests, not foster self-sustaining nations. Infrastructure built to extract resources for export, along with governance structures oriented toward European benefit, left many African economies ill-equipped for independent operation post-independence. Upon gaining independence, most African nations inherited fragile economies heavily dependent on a narrow range of exports, making it challenging to cultivate diverse, robust markets. Ironically, the same Western nations that once colonized Africa continue to offer aid, often perpetuating a neo-colonial relationship. Instead of fostering genuine economic development, this aid often reinforces dependency by addressing immediate needs while leaving structural issues unresolved. 2. Fragile domestic economies. Many African economies remain vulnerable due to under-industrialization, high poverty levels, and a dependence on primary commodities. Global price fluctuations for these goods can devastate national budgets, making leaders dependent on external assistance to stabilize economies. Without the financial cushion provided by foreign aid, many African nations would struggle to fund critical services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. In the face of widespread poverty and unemployment, rejecting aid could lead to social unrest and political instability. For leaders in nations with weak economies, the risks associated with refusing aid are high, as the political fallout from failing to meet basic needs could be catastrophic. 3. Debt trap and loan conditionality. Decades of borrowing from institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank have trapped many African nations in cycles of debt. These loans often come with stringent conditions that require austerity measures, market liberalization, and economic restructuring. While these reforms are meant to stabilize economies, they often undermine local industries, making it harder for African nations to reduce their reliance on external aid. Debt repayments take a significant toll on national economies, leaving little room for domestic investment. Additionally, the pressure to refinance debt or seek relief forces leaders to continue seeking aid, further entrenching dependency. Structural adjustment programs, frequently attached to loans, often exacerbate economic vulnerabilities, making long-term self-sufficiency even more elusive. 4. Political interests and geopolitical influence. Foreign aid is seldom a neutral transaction. Western nations often attach political strings to their financial assistance, using it as a tool to exert influence over African governments. Refusing aid may not only result in economic hardship, but also alienate key global actors whose support African leaders may depend on for international legitimacy, security, and trade partnerships. Moreover, political stability in many African nations is precarious. Leaders often rely on aid to fund election campaigns, support military structures, or provide social services that help maintain their legitimacy. In such contexts, rejecting aid could destabilize fragile political systems and leave leaders vulnerable to losing power. 5. Corruption and elite. Capture. Corruption is another factor that perpetuates the cycle of aid dependency. In some cases, a significant portion of foreign aid is misappropriated by government officials or captured by elites, benefiting a small segment of the population while leaving the broader populace in poverty. This misuse of aid reinforces dependency, as the resources intended to foster development never reach their intended targets. Leaders benefiting from the current system may have little incentive to disrupt this flow of foreign funds. The intertwining of aid and corruption not only stunts long-term development, but also strengthens regimes that thrive on external assistance rather than genuine economic reform. 6. Globalization and economic integration. Globalization has further complicated efforts by African nations to reduce their dependence on Western aid. Many African economies are integrated into global systems that limit their autonomy. Trade agreements, multinational corporations, and international financial markets all exert pressure on African nations to align with the policies and interests of wealthier nations. This reduces the room African leaders have to pursue independent economic policies without jeopardizing crucial partnerships or access to global markets. Even attempts to diversify partnerships, such as engaging with emerging powers like China, do not offer a straightforward solution. While these relationships may seem like alternatives to Western aid, they often come with their own sets of challenges, such as unsustainable debt or unfavorable labor conditions. Conclusion. The dependence of African leaders on Western aid is not simply a matter of political will, but a reflection of deeper, systemic issues. The legacy of colonialism, weak economies, debt traps, political pressures, corruption, and the realities of globalization create a web of challenges that make rejecting aid an incredibly difficult prospect. Achieving true economic independence will require African nations to address these underlying structural factors through diversification, stronger governance, and regional cooperation. However, these solutions are long-term, requiring sustained political commitment and significant resources. While Western aid provides short-term relief, the path to self-sufficiency is complex and fraught with obstacles rooted in both historical injustices and ongoing global power dynamics. No number of reasons can justify Africa's continued dependence on aid. The only path forward lies in uniting the continent to overcome the shared obstacles to true independence and self-sufficiency. Unfortunately, achieving unity has proven to be a significant challenge for both past and present African leaders. The West has long recognized the difficulties Africans face in forming a united front, and they have invested efforts to ensure Africa remains fragmented. As long as African governments continue to rely on Western aid, true development will remain out of reach. Western aid alone cannot bring meaningful progress to Africa.
Join Diaspoint in addressing leadership challenges that hinder Africa's path to progress. We believe in fostering a vision that drives Africa towards sustainable development and genuine transformation. Help amplify Diaspoint's views on real issues by sharing our messages within your network. Together we can make a meaningful impact on Africa's future. Diaspoint, empowered by Africans in diaspora.